From Hong Kong, Chicago, and the city of Stoke-on-Trent, this is the Classic Lenses podcast. Hello.
Oh, you that up.
I did.
You almost got away with it, too.
I was hoping nobody would notice that. Well, there you go.
No, we noticed. Just keep going. Das Vidania!
Yes. Well, my name is Simon. We've been hacked. My name is Simon Forster, and and I'm joined by Johnny Sisson and Perry G. Hello, Johnny.
Hello.
Hello, Perry.
Hello.
And we have a guest with us this week. And I'm going to hand over to Johnny because Johnny's really good at introductions. So,
yeah, I'm great at introductions.
Yeah, and I don't seem to be able to string a sentence together, so that's another good reason to hand it over to my friend in Chicago.
All right. Well, we are joined by none other than Vlad Kern, who has been with us before, and I think it's a safe bet to say that the past visit was it one or was it two? It's just one?
Just one. Episode.
Wow, that's amazing.
17,
well,
I think.
Yeah, early on, and I know that for a lot of folks, it's one of their favorite episodes and one of the most entertaining episodes because Vlad has a lot of amazing stories to tell us, and you're not going to hear him anywhere else because this man knows things. This man knows things, and we're gonna drag it all out of him today. Okay, Vlad's rolling his eyes. So, without further ado, Vlad, I'm going to go ahead and make it worse here and call you one of the, what shall we say, top collectors of former Soviet gear in the Chicago area. How's that?
Okay. Hey, guys. Good to see you. But where's my Soviet anthem intro and the scantily clad man and woman running out with hammers and sickles? With bacon fat.
We'll be adding them in post.
Yeah, Simon will dub that over at the beginning.
All right, sounds good. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, you too. It's weird. Yeah, it's crazy because Vlad, I'm maybe 40 minutes from you, and I haven't seen you for over a year probably at this point because
I know the quarantine stuff. I've been mailing you stuff actually.
Yeah, exactly. You've mailed me things in the meantime. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's been crazy, But
yeah, it is.
But it's when you're cooped up and all you can do is buy cameras. So
that's right. So you're joining us from I've always called it Vlad's man cave, but you might. Do you have a term for your area right there that you?
I guess it's my home museum.
Yeah.
Or the USSR Photo Official Museum.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. So those of you who have seen the photo that Simon posted, it's even better than it looks in the photo in person because it's much larger than it looks, and there are display cases loaded from floor to ceiling with Vlad. It's basically everything essentially, right?
Production stuff or more than one of everything.
Well, and I know that's even one of our topics is it's always good to get more than one of something, right? If you find one, you might as well get another.
Yeah, I think I started having a kind of parallel duplicates collection at this point because this was my primary way of getting more rare cameras. You just can't find them. Mostly you have collectors having them, and the only way to get them is to offer them something in return. So, if you've been collecting for a very long time, I don't know if I've been collecting for about 16 years or 15 years. I don't know if it's a very long time by somebody's standards, but in this time you kind of get one of every regular camera, and all you got left is all these uncommon things.
Yeah.
And those are usually in other collectors that has also been collecting for a long time, and they also basically have this arsenal of duplicates.
Yeah.
So, I would have to say about 70% of my acquisitions are probably lately done through trades.
Wow.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so it sounds like is it getting harder to find things? I mean, as more time goes by, obviously, you know. But
Absolutely,
yeah.
and more expensive too.
Yeah. Right. So something that you might have found 15 years ago is probably harder to get and a lot more expensive now, I would think.
The prices for Soviet rare stuff skyrocketed like no tomorrow. I mean, this kind of brings to this whole discussion we had on vintage camera collectors about this Leica collectors making fun of Soviet stuff. And to be honest, I really take advantage of that. Because, I mean, there have been numerous cases when I talk to a Leica collector and they're like, mention Soviet cameras, they just look down at me. I was like, oh, this Soviet crap, nobody wants it. And he's showing me his Leica 1 or Leica 2, you know, there's like, what are these, like $300-$400 cameras. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's nice, but what is this thing? And he has this like a Soviet Fed, and I'm looking at it and I see that's a really rare one. He's like, oh, it's just like Soviet garbage. Somebody just gave it to me, you know, and I don't need it. And like, you want to buy it? I'm looking at it, and so he's like, how much you want for it? He's like, oh, I'll give it to you for like $150-$180. You know, so I take this thing, and guess what? Whatever I buy from them, I mean, this thing was the most expensive thing in his Leica collection because I ended up buying a $3,500 Soviet rare Fed from this guy, you know, when he's boasting about $300-$400 Leicas of the same form factor. So, I mean, and a lot of people just don't know how to spot these too. I mean, it's kind of advantage of also living in the United States because Soviet cameras are considered trash. I found some ridiculous stuff. Like people list, there's these plastic cameras that cost upwards to $1,000. Some of these rare Soviet, Belarusian made cameras, like Helicon 1. That camera is usually around for about $350. People list them on eBay locally here, like United States shipping only for $15, like saying like some Soviet plastic point and shoot, you know. No, snap them up, and then somebody wants a trade. You get
now you've got something to trade, yeah.
Exactly, you know. So I mean, you're always on the lookout for any uncommon cameras, even if I have them. I mean, it's like it's good to have an arsenal.
Yeah. So are the old Feds, the old Leica copies in particular? It sounds like those are probably. I would just think because they're going to be some of the oldest, or at least some of the oldest of that style anyway. Is it that there are a lot of really rare prototypes and lots of them, or what makes them so unique?
Well, anything 1934, which is like the first year of production. Those are the Fed 1A, classified by Jean-Luc Princelbook. Those are extremely expensive. I've seen them sold. Some of let's say the 3-digit numbers, like low 3-digit numbers around like number 200, 300, they are probably valued about $30,000 to $40,000.
Oh my God.
And a little bit later ones, like in early 4-digit numbers, and we're talking about like 3,000, 4,000. I mean, prices really went up on these lately. I mean, you could buy those under 1,000 when I just started collecting. I actually, you don't know how many I just traded for something else because I just could buy another one for cheap. But now it's really regretting some of these decisions.
Wow. And so it's more that they're early, not so much that they're unique kind of prototypes or variations,
right.
Or is that, okay.
The early Fed ones, I mean, those are the ones that, like, in the beginning of Commune, they actually had, like, kids or not, like, early teenagers really kind of assembling them with some of the adult help. It was kind of like a work and study program in the Fed Commune in Kharkov, Ukraine. So those are really valuable. And by the way, there's been a topic of conversation like that I've had. I want to address it on the air. There's somebody was really claiming that the pre-war Fed cameras, they're not made by Feds once they became factory, like closer to the beginning of the First World War, so like 1939 or 1940. I want to say that those kids were still working there along with more professional, I guess, hired workers. alongside, and they were the experts on assembly. So I mean, there's been a lot of, I guess, discord regarding this lately. That's something I just wanted to address. Sorry, but it might be a little bit out of context, but
no, not at all.
The person who would listen to this would know what I'm talking about. So, because some of these, yes, I mean, anything pre-war in feds are, I mean, the later they are, obviously, the price goes down exponentially. But some of the earlier 3-digit numbers are just ridiculously expensive.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, those are. I mean, I don't know. I think those old feds have a kind of a beauty to them that really is unique to the feds. Also, I mean, you know what I mean. They. I don't know if it's the materials or what it is, but they do have a different sort of patina and look to them. I think
the very early ones, they're zinc plated. And the very, very early ones are actually painted black. Those are ridiculously expensive. Those are the ones I'm talking about. They're like over 30 grand.
Wow.
And they also had them in 1932. They had the copies of the Leica 1, not Leica 2, but the Leica 1. Those, I mean, I don't think I've seen one of those anywhere in museums. I don't know if anybody has those. I mean, in terms of collectors, and maybe they just got destroyed. But those are the most rare feds, and I can't even imagine if one of those surfaces, what will the price be on those? I mean, we're talking about over 100,000.
Wow.
And that's a Leica 1 copy, not the Leica 2. So there would be a one without the rangefinder.
Yeah, right. So were those, I mean, I should probably know this right offhand, but were those built in any sort of collaboration with Leica? Were they straight up copies? Were they licensed? What was the...
There's a number of theories going on around this. There's a fun legend that I don't know if it's true, as one was, and I think there was even like in one of the Soviet movies that the German delegation visited the Fed factory back in early 1930s, probably 1930 or something like that. I think just right after Leica came out, and they showed them the camera. They showed off the new Leica camera. And at the time, the commune, the children commune, they actually had a workshop, and they were making electric drills. So and while they were doing the tour, one of the people doing the tour asked if they could play with the camera, if they can see it, and leave it with somebody. And while they're showing them, so they can see how this technology works. So one of the German visitors left the camera, and while they were touring the factory, they took it apart, basically got all the schematics off of them, and put them back together and gave it back to them, and then they basically copied it. That's one theory. I also heard the theory that it was actually with the help of lights, even like to the point of almost licensing it. But I haven't seen any proof, but it was also one of the stories going around. So the exact origins would probably remain unknown.
Yeah.
Of course, I managed to find a book on the original book that's like really rare on Fed history of the factory and going back to 1930s. And of course, there was a lot of Soviet propaganda. And according to the book, the camera was a completely original development, kind of loosely based on the Leica.
Yeah.
So I mean, because in Soviet Union you will not get a better answer than that. I mean, the rest is just conjecture.
Sure. Wow. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a very rich history of this factory. I mean, with the evacuation during the war, I mean, they were making cameras during the war too, up to September, and then with the Germans basically advancing to Kharkov, they had to abandon. They put everything on the trains, and they moved the whole factory Siberia,
wow.
to Birch. But they were not making cameras then. They were just making some kind of, I think it was aerial parts, like fuel pumps for some airplanes or something like that, until the end of the war. But they did have parts with them, and then they made a whole bunch of cameras that are also very valuable, because supposedly they were made only in that city of Bersk. They're very thought after, and they also go for, I'll have to say, over $1,000 if you find one.
So are there So moving forward in time a little bit, let's say like post-war, the industry's, it seems like really picked up in the 50s, right? And there was a lot more production of cameras and camera equipment, including for call it the consumer market, or however you want to say that, right? For the general public to be able to purchase and so forth.
Well, I there's two schools on this again. One school is, according to all the Soviet publications, the public needed the cameras because they needed to photograph the Soviet life, and they needed for the foreigners to see how good they have it and so on. And with the Soviet public needed cameras, but in reality, the manufacturer they were making cameras to sell to the West. The Soviet Union was in dire need of foreign currency. So they were basically making cameras so they can export them. I mean, so it was one of the major exports.
What were the largest export markets? I mean, I would think Europe, obviously, because it's right there, but were there other large export markets at that time?
Right. So there was a central hub. One of the central hubs of export was the TOE, Technical Optical Equipment, in London, UK. So TOE was basically by a few legends, was actually a KGB front. But it was a big company in London that was working with export entity Machine Pribor and Torg. It's the machine export device international trade company, something like it's a big abbreviation of words. So they would that entity would export the cameras to TOE London. They had their own technicians because they didn't trust the Soviet quality. So they had their own technicians basically almost refurbishing the cameras right there in London, and then selling them across Europe and United States. So this was one of the major avenues of export, was through TOE London, and but there was also a lot of the stuff was going to Latin America. Lots of stuff was going to Cuba, since USSR and Cuba were huge friends. I mean, think about missile crisis and all the stuff. I mean, they would basically pay Cuba in goods and in food. I mean, all the food was, instead of going to sitting in Soviet Union, people were hungry, it would go to Cuba because the Cuba was helping out in the Cold War.
Yeah.
But a lot of it ended up in Panama. So this is like one of the research topics that I started really pursuing, the export cameras, because it's absolutely fascinating how all this kind of spidered out outside of Soviet Union and how it got distributed. And that directly United States could not import anything from USSR. I mean, because of Cold War, the embargo, and so on. So what happened was, specifically in the case with the United States, there was this company called Calamar Inc. So that was established in 1952. I had a pleasure of meeting the president. He is the son of the original owner.
Wow.
And his brother, who was I believe the VP of sales, and actually had a lengthy conversation with both of them. So it kind of helped me track down how this whole distribution of Soviet goods happened here, Soviet photographic goods. So most of the stuff was bought up by this company called International Sears Company in Panama, in Colón, Panama. It was a free trade zone. So they could actually trade with Soviet Union. So those companies had direct trade agreements with Lomo and KMZ factories in Russia, and they were exporting Zenits to Panama. And so Bob Lipsitz, who was the owner and the founder of Calamar, actually reached out directly to Panamanians, to the International Sears, and placed an order for Zenits that they had, because I mean, for the time, the price on Zenits compared to all the other Japanese cameras and everything sold here was literally pennies. I mean, you get a metal and leather camera, it wasn't like a box or anything like that. It was like a nice quality camera in comparison. to what you get for like I don't know, $30, $40, $60, and that depends on the time that it was sold. You get a Zenith for like $60. It was a almost professional SLR with interchangeable lenses. So, and they bought them for cheap from Panama, and they made their own labels that said Calamar on them. And you'll probably have seen a lot of these in the U.S. market.
I've seen a lot of Calamars. Yeah, I did not know that I didn't know that the I guess the export route was that well established through them. That's really interesting.
Right. So Calamar was it was literally the sole distributor of Soviet cameras in the United States in the 70s. So they basically made their own labels. They just glued these Calamar badges on the Zenith B, Zenith E, and Zenith EMs. And then they distributed also to Ritz camera, the Quantaray.
Okay. Yeah.
And the Quantaray, they would even make the badges for them too. The Quantaray sold those as Delta One cameras. Those are actually pretty scarce to find right now. I don't know why, but there is a catalog. They were selling it for like $59 with the Zenith E under Delta One name with a Helios 44. It was just really good price for a camera those days. You know, I mean, you guys, for some reason, Americans are crazy about Helioses.
Well, some of us are.
Right. I mean, and I think they were as crazy about them back then because, I mean, they were like really popular cameras. They're selling a lot of these. I mean, you can't open eBay without seeing Calamar for sale right now. Also, the Cambridge camera, I think, is still around. They also bought all these cameras from Calamar, and Calamar put a Cambron tag on those. Right. You might have seen those as well. So there's a number of resellers that were selling Zeniths here in the United States, and most of them basically went through Calamar. Later, Calamar started buying up from TOE London, and they actually had custom orders. So you can also see the Calamars with silkscreen logos instead of the badges glued on. Yep. Those were already special orders as well. The guys at Calamar, I don't remember anymore. It's been in the 70s, but the best guess is it was bought through TOE London with a special order from KMZ, because they would actually put labels there. They would put the markings there instead of Zenith E, where they would get blank cameras and like silkscreen it. So, I mean, you will see the same thing in UK. I mean, the TOE would sell this directly to public as well. I mean, you would see like quite a few, like Zenith EM, like also like little stickers and rebranded stuff like Cosmorex, SE. I mean, there are, I don't know, I have 2 shelves worth of different Zenith E and Zenith B variations for different markets. Wow. I think there was Japan, Canada, United States, Germany. Germany had a big distributor too, Photoquell. Huh. Sweden had Atlantic, I believe, they were distributing, but mostly, maybe they've done Zenith, but mostly it was Lubitils.
Okay.
Lubitils and the Smena 6, Smena 8, Cosmic 35. I'm sure you've seen those around too.
Yeah, right. So is there, I've thought about this before. It's funny you mentioned Cuba because, you know, they're known for also having all these vintage cars down there, like classic American vintage car. So I've always wondered, okay, is there like some massive stash of amazing Soviet gear down in Cuba as well?
You know what? I am sure of it, but because like we don't really have access to Cuba still.
Right.
So,
right. Exactly.
I mean, at some point, I have a feeling that when the relations normalize between the United States and Cuba, that we will see some really cool stuff going out of there.
I was going to say, are you already thinking about a trip to Cuba at some point?
I can't say in a year. No. But at some point, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there will be some stuff. I mean, I think it's more... I'm not sure how. I think it's more of the common stuff because I've seen what's been exported to like South America and Central America. Mm-hmm. There's some actually unique models there too.
Oh wow!
With its own naming that you can find anywhere else. Actually, Zenith name has been so popular in South America. It was like Samsung right now here. Zenith was like that in the 70s and 80s in Peru and Brazil, they started making. They would get all these Chinese point and shoots, just cheap ones, and they would put Zenith names on them because they were just selling so much better.
Because people knew the name.
So yeah, one of the things that I've spent, I would say, last 4 months looking for somebody in Peru to try to get me these point and shoots. I mean, it's been one of those quests of mine, and I almost got somebody, and it kind of fell through last minute. But I've seen about 7 or 8 different point and shoots models with the Zenith branding that are Chinese made.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I collect anything that has fake Russian cameras, and anything with Cyrillic writing. I mean, people were making fun of me last few weeks because I bought a couple of Bulgarian cameras.
Wow.
And the only reason I bought them because, first of all, that was the only camera Bulgaria ever made. It was Edelweiss camera. It was like a Carbolite or Bakelite. So I don't know if it's Carbolite or Bakelite. These two things are actually different. Carbolite was the Soviet version of Bakelite. Huh. The chemical compound was a bit different, but it looks like one of those Czech plastic 6x6 cameras. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Pioneer, one of those. But this was the only camera ever manufactured in Bulgaria. Plus, a Bulgarian language uses Cyrillic font. In the
right.
language.
Okay. So it kind of crosses over. Yeah.
Yeah, I get anything with Cyrillic font on it, so it's one of my. But it was really cool. I mean, I've only seen 3 of those cameras ever for sale, and I bought 2 of them. The first time was so expensive that I just decided to skip it. But now I ended up buying 2 in the same day, so it's kind of interesting. 2 different ones. One is a
2
black.
different ones randomly that you found in the same day. That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Somebody just listed 2 of them, 2 different sellers, and the same day. One had the black front, another one had the white front. It's like a reverse, like a negative logo. So I'm you snapped them up, and they were like 1/4 of the price that I've seen the other ones go for. I think the first one was around $400. I'm like, there's no way.
God, that is crazy.
But yeah, it's a little fun camera that seemed kind of cool. Just that the only one that was ever made there. So. It was a big surprise for a lot of people that actually Bulgaria made cameras.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all. That's really funny. I mean, it's odd. It seems like there are other places that made one-offs like that. I didn't know Bulgaria did, but
yeah,
I know other places made very small numbers of cameras, different models or whatever.
I spotted it on this Cameras Down Under website. I honestly. I can't remember the collectors' names, but it's a really good website with a big variety of cameras that's in that person's collection. And this was just kind of on it. I'm like, whoa, Bulgarian. So just decide. I mean, Bulgaria was almost USSR. I mean, it was so close, and probably one of the most influenced by USSR countries.
So were they building those primarily for export as well? Was it the same model, or
No.
do you think they were domestic?
I've never seen these sold outside of Bulgaria. I bought them both from Bulgaria.
Oh wow!
And I don't think they made a lot of them either. So it was like a small batch.
Huh.
Looks like so. No, there's a lot of cool stuff coming out from the Eastern Bloc.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it seems like. Early 90s into 2000s, there was a sudden rush of stuff coming out, right?
Absolutely.
Did that happen kind of all at once and then it's trickled off, or are things still coming out that are unusual, or
things still coming out? I mean, it probably started with the 90s, but people started to get laid off, or they still had jobs but weren't getting paid. And I mean, a lot of stuff that happened. I don't know. That I've heard stories they would stuff from the museums, they would go to a factory museum. I don't want to name which one. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
And they would have all these prototypes there, it's part of the museum, and then they would put a regular camera in there, take the prototype out. Nobody sees a difference. 2 screws difference, Wow. Sell the prototype for. I mean, they're basically trying to feed themselves. I mean, it's people did not have money. People are trying to survive, and so this is when the 90s whole faking industry started in USSR. I mean, they started making. There's this cameras. There's just like unbelievable workmanship, like Fed Sport. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. It's like a lake of it with this on a Fed winder. With like a crazy military engraving. I mean, it's the top-notch quality, or like a Zorky 75. It's like one of those big 75 frame, like, it's like a reporter, I think. Those.
Okay.
So it's like similar to that one, and it was all handmade out of a combination of different parts, and you couldn't tell it's not factory made. And a lot of them were made in factory because people were not get paid. They weren't doing anything, sitting at work. So they're like, let's just use this equipment that we have to make fakes.
Amazing.
I mean, I bought some photocore cameras. Those are those bellows cameras,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, so from Ukraine, I actually had the guy who worked at the Fed factory in the early 2000s using their equipment to refurbish these cameras. So this were the Lomo photocore cameras refurbished at the Fed factory. And they would put like a crazy skins on them. They would like skin one of these Lenin books, that had those embossed Lenin portrait or embossed those Soviet coat of arms, different color leather, and then they would just basically reskin these photocores. They were beautiful. I mean, I still like this kind of cameras. I mean, they're just for fun. I have a separate shelf for fakes, gold plated stuff, and just this different like fake anniversary cameras. They're just a lot of fun, and I always buy them when they're not that expensive. But you can see how much workmanship went into that, and they would still sell them for very affordable price here, and people still buy them, and people still buy painted cameras. I mean, you see this stuff on eBay. I mean, when I asked the seller why are you painting these cameras, I mean, the original versions, they are much more valuable. And as a collector, I kind of didn't want to see that. Right. And he's like, you know what? They sell 4 times more when they're painted than they're not. People just pull the trigger. I mean, they see like a red Zorky, like, oh, I have to have it.
Right.
So, or like reskin. So it's all business. And I mean, that collectors don't like it, but it's a thing for users. I mean, I guess because they just like the camera to look nice. They pimp it up.
Yeah, sure. It makes sense. I mean, I think some of those, is it the, some of those cameras, the Zorkis that look like they're in like traditional Ukrainian designs and motifs. I actually think they're beautiful.
There's a few accounts on Etsy actually that the quality of the workmanship is amazing. I mean, the level of detail. I've seen some coarse ones. I mean, the one that was, I think, posted recently in one of those Soviet groups, the Gzhel, the blue and white one, it was very coarse, but there's some very finely, I mean, you can tell the person's like a professional artist. It looks like these kind of patterns were usually put like on China in Soviet Union,
Right.
Fine China, there would be like there was the blue and white Gzhel, the Khakhlama, which is like a red and black, and all these patterns. And so when applied to cameras professionally, they look amazing. And I'm sure there's market for it. I mean, as long as I use some kind of common cameras, like I don't mind them painting on Zenith E's or Zorky 4s. I mean, those things I think do have a place on collector shelves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think some of them they look really cool that way. So, did you ever? For the longest time, there was that woman in Chicago on Craigslist who had, you know what I'm talking about because you're laughing.
She's still selling it.
She's still trying to sell that camera.
It's still on Craigslist and it's still on Etsy for $1,500. I think at one point in time, maybe 7 years ago, some collector was selling his fakes collection. And I probably bought like 15 of them for like $75 a pop.
Wow.
And one of them was actually the same camera that she's trying to sell. And she's still convinced it's a real thing.
Yeah, it's like a personal gift from Stalin or something, right?
Yeah, it's called like Stalinets. It's basically like it's like the Stalin's camera or whatever. But it's a free country. If she wants to sell it for 5 years, she can.
Right. Yeah, right. Someday somebody will buy it, maybe.
I mean, there's a lot of them on eBay too. So.
Yeah. So that kind of feeds into another question I have for you that I was actually chatting about this with Robbie Jameson last night. So thinking about like the let's say like the mid to late 50s up through the 60s, 70s. I mean, photography in the West as well was one of the, I would say, top things people spent their disposable income on. I mean, cameras were, they were relatively expensive in relation to people's salary, right? But everybody wanted a camera, either a still and or movie camera, to make home movies, and that's what people did. I mean, even when I was a kid, we'd pull out the movie projector, we'd pull out the slide projector, and look at family photos. I mean, which I feel like is something that doesn't really go on the same way anymore. But it was like a primary recreation activity for people, I feel like, back in the day, even in the in the US. But thinking about like the Soviet market, it was there an element of that as well, where there were probably limited types of consumer goods someone could even buy? Were cameras one of those things that were also very popular? And what was, let's call it like the the tradition of, like, say, vernacular photography, family photography, where people would just, take family photos and stuff. Was that a primary sort of thing that people did? Was it very popular? I mean, how accessible were cameras to people, say your average Soviet citizen, in relation to their salary? And, how common was it just for people to do photography and have cameras?
To be honest, I don't think it was that much different than it was here in the US. I mean, as far as I remember, back to 1980s when I was a kid, I mean, everybody I know was carrying cameras, taking pictures and slides, and we had like tons of slides that we brought with us. I mean, we had a projector, and we'll also sit down sometimes and look at the slide and look at the diafilms. I don't know what it is in English. It's like the roll film that the color one, but they had like stories on them, like kid stories.
Oh yeah, like the film strip projector.
Yeah. But that was really, really cool. I mean, like a lot of families had that. So because, I mean, the TV was just one channel, and it would end at 9 p.m. or something.
Wow.
And I mean, it wasn't like one channel, but it was pretty limited. It was like a couple channels back in the 80s. So we would turn down the lights and put the projector on and watch those film strips and watch the slides that from like our previous vacations and the family. And I mean, there was quite a few photo studios. People were very hands-on with cameras too. I mean, there's quite a few cameras were really affordable. I mean, there's the Semanas were probably number one camera that you would see in like that people would start with. The Semana 1, 2, like 1, 2, 3, 4 by both factories, like Gomes and Bilomo, MMZ actually at the time. Then the Semana 8M. I mean, those were like fraction. Those were like almost cost as much as toys back then. So like 15 rubles when the average salary was around 100. Like 80.
Wow. Okay.
So it wasn't that bad. I mean, but when you want to go into more professional, people would get like a Zenit E or a Zorkis, and those were the metal cameras that were a bit more expensive. I mean, some of them like start would cost you like 3 monthly salaries, stuff like that, you know. But and also you could not always buy them. I mean, some of these cameras like Start you could buy. I mean, Start was like so expensive that it was sitting on the shelves. But stuff like Zenit E's and B's, a lot of cases you would have to stand in line to get one of those, or you have to know somebody who would sell you one that's just kind of like hook you up with one. Because I mean, even though it was maybe like I don't remember, it was like a monthly salary, even maybe 2 monthly salaries.
Wow.
You would still be in line to get them. Same thing with cars, man. Like you could not just go and buy a car even when you had money. People wait months, years to get one because the allocation was very scarce. I mean, stuff like that. Zenit E was probably considered like the status symbol.
Wow.
In USSR. Yeah, and then the Zorkis, like any kind of like metal and leatherette cameras were like if you're in a college and you have one on your neck, you'll be like the cool guy. You either have a guitar on your shoulder or a camera.
Or a camera.
If you have both, man, that's it.
You were set.
Yeah, you're set for life.
Big man on campus.
Yeah, and you were the coolest guy, and everybody wants to hang out with you. So, but it was a lot of film. The film was Svema, and it looked like it was made out of wood. Because the early film, I knew a photographer that came over, and he was just reminiscing about like how he was shooting film professionally, and he's like, I bought a Praktica, a German Praktica camera, and I like their lenses better than Helios. Because to be honest, in USSR, if anything foreign or imported were just like the pinnacle of everything, because the Soviet production was just crap. This is like the common opinion, but in reality, actually, if you look back now, it's not so. Some of the Soviet stuff was like really good.
Yeah.
Look at an Iskra camera. So he's like, I had this Praktica, and I tried to use Soviet Svema film on it, and it would file down the sprockets because they were plastic in Praktica. So it's like basically after like a month's worth of photo shoots, the body was gone because it just couldn't handle Soviet film. It was so thick. And, so he ended up just getting a Zenit that has metal sprockets on them, metal gears. There's the sprocket gears, and metal sprockets are on the film.
Yeah.
And gears are on the camera.
Yeah, sure. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So they will get. He had to use the Zenit body with German optics. They were. So that was his ultimate combination. But yeah, it was coarse. So that's like built like tank, like it's like a normal Soviet.
Yeah, right. Just like you would expect, right?
Yeah.
So there are a few specific cameras, and I'm just looking through the list here that we were discussing earlier, but kind of along the same lines here, just things that were surprising to find out. One of which is the Polaroid cameras that were made in. Was it still the Soviet Union then, or was it afterwards?
It was right on the edge, actually. It was started right at the time Soviet Union was during the Perestroika years with Gorbachev.
Okay.
Early 90s, very early 90s. So, and what happened was Polaroid decided they wanted cheap labor.
Yeah.
So they built, I guess it was an affiliate factory in near Moscow called Svetozor. So that Svetozor was actually manufacturing two camera models. So there was a 636 and a 635 CL Polaroids. And the 635 CL is really easy to spot if it was a Soviet one, because it had, instead of the UK version, they had like a tricolor stripe going down the body. That one had just two red ones. And those, if you open the film compartment on the 636, they both say like the 635 says made in USSR still.
Wow.
And even on the back too says like assembled in Russia. And the 636 also had the same thing in the body, but it was say made in Russia already. The 636, it was a later camera. What's more interesting is most of the cameras on the market that are 636 Polaroids, they actually all have the electronics manufactured in Russia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they were the main motherboard manufacturer for Polaroid cameras,
oh, wow.
like in the 600 film series.
Oh my gosh!
So if you open up one of those 636s, there's still a bunch of them still made in UK, but overwhelming majority were actually manufactured in the Russian facility. Those pretty interesting. Those are pretty collectible. They cost a lot more than the regular UK versions. Huh. If you ever find them, they're fairly common in former Soviet Union republics, but if you want to buy one on eBay, it'll probably cost you around $100.
Wow.
In comparison to $5 for UK version.
Right. And then another one on the list is the mystery of the TS-VVS.
Oh yeah, that's the enigma of the Soviet camera collecting. The TS-VVS camera is basically like a hybrid and I'm sure like a lot of people have seen it around. It's a hybrid between a Fed and a Kiev.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's a Fed with a context mount.
Oh my gosh,
but
that is
not,
crazy.
but it's not really a Fed. So that's the thing. I mean, there was so many theories. Nobody knows where it was made and who made it, really, because if you look at it, it looks like a Leica, but it's not really. It looks like a Fed, but not really, because it like all the parts look different. The viewfinder looks different, and it has the context mount, like a Kiev mount on it. And it comes with a Zeiss lens on it as well. But on top, there's like a star and says TSVVS or VTSVS. Nobody knows exactly, but it looks like it's a topographical service of the USSR, basically. It's a military topographical service. So one theory was it was made by Fed. It's not, because I mean I've held a few of these in my hands, and I can tell you right now it does not feel like a Fed. I mean when you wind the Fed, it goes like you get this crunchy thing. This thing is buttery smooth. I mean like only a German camera can function like this. And so then there was a theory that first published by DVD Technic site saying that these were made in Moscow, a secret military factory called Almaz. I really highly doubt that. I mean, there's no way a factory that never made cameras made a camera at this high quality.
That good,
yeah. This is
somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah, this camera is basically like a next level from Feds. I mean, it behaves like somebody was making cameras for decades and had experience to build one to function that smoothly, and everything feels like a German camera. So the second more probable version, and that I've seen some book mentions from a history of the military topographical service of USSR. A book from 2011, I believe, mentions that there was a special order in Hildebrand, Germany, a workshop that to manufacture some cameras. It doesn't say which one it was, but that's probably the most probable theory. But still, I mean, there's no proof. There's no actual documentation. I've never seen a manual for this camera. I've seen a box, but it was just a black leather box. There's no markings. So there's no other official documentations anywhere in the magazine, any publications about this camera. At some point, I mean, I was actually thinking that this was something that was made in 1990s.
Wow.
So really? and actually, and to this point, it's one of my running theories, because the people that were making these, I don't want to say fakes. These are like custom cameras or like fantasy cameras back in the 90s. They really were so good. And I wouldn't discount the possibility that they made around 1,200 or 1,300 of these cameras for export to the West. I mean, it was all exported from Ukraine to Poland. To Warsaw, there was a big photographic market back in the 90s that we were selling all this stuff that was exported. It was basically taken out from USSR, former USSR, from museums and everything. All the stuff went there first.
Yeah.
So this is a very mysterious camera. Still no solid origin story on it. So it's still a big hot topic for debate.
Wow. I gotta look that up. It sounds. I'm just trying to imagine what it looks like. It sounds really interesting. So, how often do they show up, or do they not really show up much at all?
They show up. They show up. Yeah. I mean, they used to. They go up in price pretty steeply lately too. I mean, you can probably back in 2005, you can probably score one for around $1,000. Now I've seen them listed for around 3, 2.5, 3. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I kind of stay away from that camera, to be honest. I wasn't like a big one on my list to buy because I just don't feel like it's a Soviet camera.
Okay. Wow.
I'm just on. I decided to just check it out, and it's on on Fandom at the moment, Camerapedia, and there's a picture of it there, and it's a really good looking camera. And
Wow.
but it's interesting, as I say, because you can see how it's got the Contax RF mount, and I was just looking to see if it also got the wheel, the focusing wheel like a Contax camera would, but it doesn't. Am I right in thinking it doesn't have one? Is it just focused conventionally?
It does not. That's right. Yeah, you focus it like you focus a FED.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I'm looking at it now. That is really cool.
And there's like a marble. There's also a marble covering for it, like a gold marble covering too, for like some early models. I don't know if this is the one you found.
Wow, it's beautiful. Huh.
No, it's absolutely a beautiful camera, but it does not feel like a Soviet camera to me. Like, and after I've held so many Soviet cameras in my hand and tried to operate them, this only feels like a Leica would feel, like a well CLA'd Leica.
It's interesting. There's like a front plate on it that's holding the Contax mount, and it does. When you say like it could well be a custom camera. That's a very high quality custom camera. It does seem to have that look about it, because it doesn't look like a major factory would produce it, but in the same way, it doesn't look like it's in any way shoddy either. So it's like it looks like an artisan product.
But it in large quantities. I mean, it is made over 1,000 pieces made, and they're really consistent in production as well. And they're all very high quality made cameras. So yeah, it's a mystery. maybe to be solved one day once some kind of documentation of them show up.
That's really cool. Yeah, because things do amazingly still show up, right? And I mean, big things still show up information wise. Yeah.
Information wise, and new cameras show up. That's the craziest part. I mean, every year I see, I don't know, 20 new cameras I've never seen in my life.
Wow, really?
Like Soviet cameras, yeah, like prototypes and like actual photographs of things people have and people buy. I mean, I would have to say the largest collection of Soviet cameras and prototypes and lenses and prototypes are also here in Chicago. It's and that person probably will be listening to this podcast, but I'm sure. I just want to shame him a little bit, because he needs to display it. Right now, it's all sitting in a closet.
Uncool, man! Come on.
He needs to build a display for it. I mean, this camera needs to see the light, and he's been promising that for the last 3 years.
He even knows the guy that could help him with that.
Yep, I told him I'm gonna come and help you. Well, with the virus now, it's a little tough, but
but after, I'll have no excuse.
Yeah, we need this stuff to be. I mean, it's. I would have to say it's one of the most complete collections in the world that is nearby here. So.
Well, that's. I was going to say it's an interesting subject in itself. Collecting. I mean, you started the Vintage Camera Collectors Facebook group, which is an enormous group on Facebook.
Yeah, monster now.
Yeah, and we don't have to go too far into that, because we covered that back in May 2018. Right. We talked about it then. But it was interesting, because when we confirmed that we were going to do this show, I decided to tell the world that we've got you back on, and I posted things in Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter, and there was only two negative comments. I say only. I mean, I wasn't really expecting any negative comments, so I was a little bit surprised. And it was and this was on Twitter, and it was interesting, because the view was, it's quite sad to see all those cameras that are not going to get used. So they're like as part of a collection that's to be looked at rather than to be used. And my immediate thoughts on that is like, I know you as a person, and I know the efforts that you go through to document what you do, to tell the world, to be very, very open and helpful about the cameras. You run your USSRphoto.com site, which has got a wealth of information. You also supported recently, up until recently, the Soviet photo site, which was at risk of disappearing. But I'm just wondering what your view is on that view of the collecting world.
Well, my position is pretty clear. I mean, I like photography. I like shooting pictures in general. I'm not saying film or digital, but I used to when I first started collecting, I would start definitely with most common cameras, and I would take a few of them, and I probably shot 60 or 70 of them. I ran the films through them. But those are common cameras. There's plenty of them for sale. I mean, I keep in my collection just to have one of each, or more than one of each. So I mean, those are the cameras that are easily available, a lot of made. When it comes to rare cameras, I mean, I consider myself as more of a historian and trying to preserve this. So this is more of a museum. And I study these, and I study the history behind them, and I basically compare variations of these, and I put it all out on the website that I have in numerous groups on the Instagram account that I have. I usually like to show the differences to the people, and I mean some of these cameras are literally, there's only a few of them left, and it's better, I think, that they're in somebody's collection than they're sitting in somebody's attic collecting rust. If you go out and shoot one, I mean, you're at the risk of basically wearing down one of the last known examples of this model and kind of losing it forever. This way they're preserved, they're well cared for. And I mean, they're well documented, and the information is available for everyone to see. And I know the people that know me personally, and you're always welcome to visit my home museum if you're in Chicago area. So it's more of it's the same thing when people collect classic cars, and something that's really rare, one or two made. You would not drive it to work every day, You would preserve it, and you would display it, and so on. I mean, I don't think my philosophy is any different than that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. The other issue, and this is not really aimed at you, especially with the way that you just explained what your collection is, and actually, it's a case of your collection is very specific to Soviet cameras.
Right.
Which many people, as you've said, have got a very bad attitude towards them. Although, let's face it, there are some that aren't that good. I hate the Cosmic 35 with a passion. I think it's one of the worst cameras I've ever used, and I would never wish to use one again. I hate it. Or I just had a bad one, perhaps. That could well be the case. But how about the accusation about collectors driving prices up? What's your view on that?
I guess driving prices up for who? For other collectors, or driving prices up for the users who want to shoot rare cameras?
I guess it's more towards the users, really.
Well, I wouldn't see a reason why a user would spend 10 times more. I mean, a difference in Soviet cameras, difference between a rare camera and a regular camera, maybe like 2 extra screws on the body. Like there's cameras that are or like a little bit different logo than the normal production camera, or a little bit different paint than the normal production camera. I mean, there's a Crystal camera, for example, that I have a pre-series version of. The only difference is it has hammer tone paint all over the body versus the black paint on the body portion in the production camera. I mean, they behave exactly the same, the regular camera and the pre-series, but the pre-series would cost you a few $1,000s, where you can get for $20 you can get a regular model. So for users, I don't see a reason to buy a rare camera unless they're also collectors. But if they are also collecting users and you use a real camera, I mean, you put this camera at risk, in my opinion. It's kind of like a double-edged sword type of situation. But, I mean, it's yes, the collectors are driving prices up for other collectors, and that's it's like this in any other vintage or antique market, I believe. I mean, same thing with paintings, with art, with anything you can think of that people collect. I mean, there's more scarce it is, the higher it is, the higher the price somebody's willing to pay, the higher the price will go up. And I just don't see users kind of getting involved, like pure users getting involved in the collector's market.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they would be happy like shooting some like a normal production camera, because they would not see any difference.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and it's interesting from what you were saying earlier about some of these particularly rare cameras with low serial numbers and things like that, and I struggle with it myself when you talk about some of the prices of these very rare cameras get, and you know, I know what the answer is. You know, you already said it there. It's about scarcity, rarity, and things like that. But how does a camera that's so scarce reach £100,000? I just is it just because is that the pure collector's market talking there about one collector must have something that somebody doesn't have, or I mean, what drives those huge prices?
I would assume you're talking about the Goy Leningrad that was sold in auction a couple of weeks ago for $100,000.
Yeah.
If you include buy a premium. Yeah, well, that camera is part of like a very small prototype batch made by a research entity rather than a factory. So this is a museum piece. And definitely the collectors were all over it. I mean, lately the collector market for Soviet cameras exploded. I mean, some of the stuff I bought for really cheap. I mean, it costs a lot of money right now. I mean, it's people started seeing Soviet cameras as having value lately, just because, I mean, they're more familiar with them now. I mean, back in the 90s, 2000s, that the stuff just started just pouring out of USSR. People just didn't know what to think about it. They didn't know what the heck it was. There was no documentation. And then finally the Jean-Luc Princel's book came out. That gave some idea what it is, but his book only covers maybe 30% of all the Soviet cameras or less, because there's new cameras appear. And when you have stuff like Goy Leningrad come out to market, I mean, the collectors that can afford this kind of stuff, they're literally all over it. And there's a lot of collectors also now in Russia that started basically trying to repatriate these rare cameras back to Russia to keep their collections, and some of them have means to do that. So, and there's a lot of collectors in Europe that became very interested. I mean, they started seeing all these publications and the scarcity and the history behind them. There's more information. The more information comes out, the more these cameras gain in value. And I'm kind of guilty of that too by running a forum about this for the last 15 years, because I mean, I've been accused a lot of times of driving prices up on a lot of these, because all of a sudden you start discussing this particular camera on the forum and you look at eBay prices, they suddenly like a few $100 more than they were yesterday, because people are like, oh, I have this camera, let's just sell it, because like all of a sudden you know that these cameras were made by like only like in 200 made and made specifically for like dignitaries and so on, you know, for special event. And so once people see scarcity, is just the nature of the market.
Yeah.
I mean, we've often been accused of driving prices up by talking about a lens. I think Ricoh 50mm f2s are skyrocketing in prices at the moment, because I said something nice about them about a month ago. I mean, they've gone from around about in the UK about £15, so they must be around about £17 now. They're really flying. But
thanks to you, I sell like Helios lenses for crazy amount, and people just bid for them. I mean, the Helios lenses alone maintain my camera budget right now.
Wow.
I mean,
pump and dump, baby, pump them and dump them.
I put them on eBay. I mean, I buy stuff in large quantities in Russia and Ukraine, so I have somebody just pick up these lenses as I see them.
Yeah.
When they get here, I put them on eBay. I sell maybe 5 or 6 of them a day.
Wow. No
at about
kidding.
at about $60 a pop. Well, I put good description and try to put pictures of the diaphragm and everything, but they really sell like hotcakes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for some reason the United States is a very good market for them right now. People should deal with it.
Yeah,
amazingly.
Keeping on the auction side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember if we talked about this when you were last on, or this was a conversation we had after that podcast. But I went to I bought a lot of stuff at a Soviet camera auction in the UK, and at that auction there was quite a bit of KGB stuff, and which was just absolutely fantastic. But there was one camera, and it was a spy camera that was disguised as a box of cigarettes.
Okay.
And off the top of my head, I think there was 2 bidders on it, and it got up to like about £30,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is not the worst.
oh. Wow.
You're talking about John Player Special, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few of them. I maybe paid like $80 for them. $100. I'll tell you something more without naming any names. They were overbidding each other just out of principle.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
So this is why it sold for $30,000, and it was 30,000.
Oh, that's
British
harsh.
pounds. It wasn't even dollars.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so this was awesome.
Well, as I say, I was in the room when that was happening, and obviously these 2 bidders were not in the room. They were telephone bidders, I think. And
Right.
The place was just in silence. People just like looking at each other, completely dumbfounded with it just kept on going up and up and up and up. So, oh wow, that's a whole different spin on it now.
Well, since we're now on the subject of
Get in trouble
the
now.
KGB
Telling you this.
and espionage, and we talked about solar winds a little bit earlier, maybe we should segue into that area, because I know, Vlad, you have a few things you can tell us. One of which, well, you've got a couple of really good stories that are Homeland Security / FSB related, I believe. And I know
yeah,
there's a KGB auction coming up and a few things like that.
Yeah, one of them is an interesting incident just occurred just a couple of weeks ago in Russia. I promised the guy I'm not going to name him. There were a fellow collector ordered a couple of like 3 aerial cameras, like decommissioned stuff that stuff that's usually on eBay, and he ordered another Ukrainian auction site similar to eBay, and shipped from Ukraine to Russia. So, and they had 3 aerial cameras from maybe 60s, 70s, maybe 80s. I'm not even sure if they're used anymore. They're just military cameras. I myself have maybe I'm going to look on my shelves, but 3 shelves worth of these cameras. Those are the stuff that mounted on MiGs and helicopters and some submarines and so on. I mean, it's freely available on eBay if you search for it. So he's a package got arrested by customs in Russia, and as Spetsnaz and FSB basically broke down the door into his apartment and started a search. Did a search, didn't take anything, but he got arrested, and now he's facing 3 to 7 years in prison for importing military cameras. So I wish him luck. I'm hoping his lawyer will try to bring it down to maybe a fine, but the fines are huge too, but maybe a 1 year time served. But this is pretty crazy. I mean, the same thing happened in Ukraine, if you guys remember, 5 years ago or so, when a a fellow collector tried to ship a KGB F-21 camera to Czech Republic, and he ships them all the time. He was just like one of the famous dealers and the collectors. And he got arrested. Same thing happened, and also a criminal prosecution. But in the end, there was a conflict between Ukraine and Russia where he lived, that whole zone. Yeah. So they had better things to worry about than to prosecute them for cameras. But the fact is that there was also criminal investigation. That was like all over TV news and everything. We tried to spin it. I think Petapixel did a story on this as well.
Yeah.
Just tried to shame the government to let him go. Thankfully, I think he's all right now. But it's just this crazy stuff happens with his military cameras and spy cameras. That be careful when you order it, and you might put the person at risk in former Soviet Republic. So maybe try to get them somewhere in Europe at least, where nobody cares about them.
Vlad, is that because they are sort of legacy laws on the books, or is it like a legitimate that there's still technology that is they just don't want out? Or
both. I mean, with the KGB camera, the F-21, the criminal codex of Ukraine was actually taken verbatim from USSR criminal codex. So, and this camera falls under surveillance equipment that's basically prohibited by law. But also, as I was explained later by one of the people that are close to special services in Ukraine and Russia, that they still use these cameras sometimes during investigations because film evidence considered it much more solid than a digital. So some of the investigators still shoot film and present negatives as evidence because digital is so easily doctored right now.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's pretty interesting, and with the aerial cameras, to be honest, I think they still fly them. Those planes are so old. I mean, those cameras, I don't think ever got replaced. I mean, those are cameras that just do they just take pictures of radar screens and stuff. Just like registering cameras. But sure, I like them. They look cool. They're like heavy duty and they're super heavy. There's definitely a collector's market for them, but it's a pity that for collectors that's kind of being prosecuted for that right now. Wow. Also, speaking of the KGB stuff, there was a museum in New York. There was a KGB museum that opened a couple of years ago. I actually went there for opening, and that KGB spy museum in Chelsea, in Manhattan, it was an amazing collection of stuff. There was not just cameras, it was recording equipment, bugs, and he even had current FSB stuff, which I don't know how he had to have some kind of agreement with somebody to have those displayed, because I'm like, how? He's like, don't ask. So that it's thousands of items. I mean, it's just an absolutely amazing museum. I spent 2 days there, just going each little item and taking pictures. It's just mind-boggling stuff. So a lot of the stuff was actually in the new book, the KGB cameras, the Secret History of KGB Cameras book. That was written by Keith Melton, Detlef Friesleben, and Michael Haska. It's available on Amazon right now. Actually, you can still buy that book. It's amazingly, it's very well illustrated and just absolutely amazing book. They also have a Stasi book coming out also in a couple of weeks, I think. Very high quality publications. I mean, if you're into this kind of spy stuff, I highly recommend you getting these books. You can pre-order the Stasi one right now. And unfortunately, this museum in New York, because of the pandemic, he just couldn't keep the doors open because you can imagine how much the rent is in Chelsea, Manhattan.
Yeah, right.
So he unfortunately had to close down, and now he's going to sell everything, the entire museum stock, on February 14th in Julian's auction in Beverly Hills. So I just ordered the catalog. The catalog itself is like a nice small book, that's hundreds of pages. So it's just to have it, it's like a really good price guide too.
So do you think that that's an example? There will be bidders there trying to repatriate some of that stuff?
I think so. I don't know how they're gonna import it back in Russia, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah.
But I know quite a few people that are planning to attend, and this is the stuff you get to see and experience and buy once in your lifetime, I think, because this is definitely the largest KGB equipment collection in the world. I mean, he even has like Hitler's headphones there.
No way.
There's like an NKVD stuff. I mean, this is incredible stuff. I mean, at the museum, I was walking around with my jaw on the floor because some of the stuff he had, like tree cameras, like, and cameras built into trees, and it's just like ridiculous stuff. I mean, I even bought one from him, actually. So not the tree one, but I got the rollover camera, the Rubin. It's like a little camera. You just roll over a sheet of paper and it transfers it to film.
Oh way!
Yeah, it's cool.
That is wild.
That's like I have a little shelf going of KGB cameras myself, so some really cool stuff that I always love to play around with because they're very unusual.
I remember last time I was there, you had a little area right by the entrance there.
Yeah, that's right. And I have twice as more stuff now.
Now it's bigger. Okay.
Yeah, it's like with this quarantine stuff, I'm telling you, it's like there's a word in Georgian that is untranslatable. It's the word is shemomichama. What it means is like I didn't want to, but I ate it all. So that's what happened.
That's great.
All this stuff comes out, and especially, I mean, I hate to say this. I mean, maybe I'm helping people, but people in Ukraine and Russia, I mean, it's really tough for them, especially with the pandemic, with work, and they started to sell. A lot of the people I know, like all my close friend collectors, had to sell their collections. This was the time when I work from home, so I still have my job. So I'm happy. I'm really thankful for that. So I was able to buy quite a few things because normally I wouldn't probably be able to. So I honestly was binging on stuff. So I added quite a few interesting KGB cameras as well. I mean, I think you can see them on my Instagram. I always post anything that I buy. Some neat stuff. Let's put it this way. But yeah, that book is incredible. I mean, the illustrations and how all the stuff is used. He even had like specifically made illustrations for them, just demonstrating the scenes in which these crazy hidden cameras, like that there was a camera. I actually had one that a camera, you drill a hole and you put it through the wall. It was like about a meter long lens, and to spy on somebody or drill it through the ceiling. So they have illustrations how these cameras are used, and I bought it in Peru, on eBay. In Peru, on eBay. And it was described as Soviet geological equipment.
Wow.
So, well, somebody talked me into selling this because they made me an offer I could not refuse.
Yeah.
But I actually sold it. But in the end, I bought somebody else's entire collection of really rare other civilian cameras. So I'm happy about that. Not regretting it. But some of the stuff that goes for me is really incredible. I mean, especially this kind of military, paramilitary, and the special division stuff. So.
Yeah. Wow. So I imagine there are things on your list that you will not divulge to anyone because you don't want anyone knowing that you're looking for it. Is that true? Yes or no?
Some things. There are very few, though. I mean, mostly my agents in Ukraine and Russia already know what I'm looking for, so they
right. So you have all your people are working for you, busily looking for things and sending you leads.
Pretty much. I mean, most of the stuff I buy is all through somebody. I mean, I received about 40 kilograms worth of cameras in the last 2 weeks.
Whoa.
that's, I don't know, translated to pounds, but it came in from Russia and Ukraine, so it was measured in kilograms. That's 100 pounds.
Wow.
I don't know, close to 180 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the stuff that I've been collecting there. So friends of mine just kind of collected for me, and then they ship it. It was one big shipment. It's the most economical way.
Makes sense.
Yeah, most definitely. And plus, like when I trade something from here, I send them the camera, and they send it to somebody locally. It's also easy for them. Then if I get it as one big batch, and that's why I keep the second parallel collection going of these duplicates.
Yeah.
One of the guys I was talking to is a very funny story that I bought a few cameras from them, and we've been talking, and all of a sudden he calls me up. I was looking for some Zorkies, and he calls me up. He's like, guess what? He's like, what? I looked in my oven, and I found 50 Zorkies. I'm like, how? In what world do you just suddenly find 50 Zorkies in oven? He's like, oh, like 6 years ago. He's like, I never cook. He's a simple guy, and he's basically had some people coming over, and he didn't want to show them that he has a lot of cameras, and he put them in the oven and forgot about them.
Stash them in the oven?
Yeah,
Makes
pretty
sense.
much. And then 5 years later, he just basically decided to reheat something all of a sudden, and he's like, oh, look at all those Zorkies. So this is crazy stuff. I mean, just keeps happening. The stories I hear, I mean, this whole story. I don't know if I told you one with the book from Brazil. So a good friend of mine, a forum member, Luis Paracampo, when I first started my USSR photo website, asked me for my address. I'm like, why? He's like, it's a surprise. I just want to send you something. I'm like, okay, I forgot about it. I mean, 6 months, 7 months came. I totally forgot. He just even like asked about it. All of a sudden, I get this package in my mail. It was like a flat, kind of like one of those bubble envelopes, like the large ones. And the whole thing was just like, you couldn't see what it is because the whole thing was like covered in this blue Homeland Security, inspected by Homeland Security tape.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
You could tell this thing was open like maybe 7 or 8 times, if not more. And there's like, you couldn't see the package. You just Homeland Security tape the whole entire package. So I emailed him like, what gives? What did you like? I opened it. There's a book on feds. There's actually an amazing book by 2 Italian authors that have like very detailed Fed classifications. It's like and he published it in Brazil and sent me a copy. So we couldn't figure out why. Why would that a book would take 6 months to get to me, and then after months he emails me. He's like, I remembered. He's like, what did you remember? At the time he sent the book, he was experimenting with daguerreotype prints. So he was cooking mercury and cyanide. So I guess the book was somewhere nearby, and all the vapors got on it. So apparently, it was tripping every single chemical sensor on the way to the United States and being delayed in every little Segway station.
So along the same lines, I know that you've mentioned to me that you have certain things that you keep in the garage because they are slightly radioactive.
Not garage, it's in my basement, but
okay.
Well, they are radioactive only when turned on, to be honest, because I started looking into that more detail. So I mean, I'm not afraid of that much of them anymore. But there are a couple of night vision scopes, like a first generation, but they look like movie cameras, and I buy them. They're actually really expensive, but for some reason I keep finding them in antique malls here in the United States, and with a label "broken Soviet movie camera." But it's actually a night vision device, and the first generation emitted X-ray radiation when you turn it on.
Oh, cow.
So I turned it on once. And then I read about it, and I'm like, oh, crap. So I decided not to put batteries into those anymore. But those, if you ever see those, be really careful with them. And actually, I'm trying to message every single person in US who tries to sell them on eBay, and I think some of the people actually know also try to sell them, saying like, do not turn them on, or put a disclaimer saying do not turn them on because they're highly radioactive. It's called a night vision device 1 and night vision device 2. I think it's like oh god, I forgot the name of it. It's like NP1 and NP2 or something like that. And there's like an NP3. I mean, they're all radioactive. All the first generation night vision gear from USSR.
You just reminded me of something there. I've got I bought a few of them in my time. I think it's from the TCS3 night vision. I think it's TCS3, but they've got 100mm f2 lens on them, and I've not really been able to find an equivalent, because I mean there's the equivalent to the with the Cyclop. With the 85 1.5, but
the Helios 40 on it,
the Helios. We seem to call it a Helios 100mm f2, but really it's not a Helios. We don't really know what it is, and I'm just wondering. And it could be. I don't know if it's a projection lens as well, or whether it was just for this camera. I mean, I forget the actual the maker, but the maker was one of the optics people that did more for military than they did for consumer, and I'm just wondering if you know anything about that lens.
You're talking about the Cyclop that the people adapt to use on cameras. I'm pretty sure it's a Helios. I mean, not pretty sure, but I think I've heard that it's a Helios 40, just stripped down. There's no aperture or anything.
No, well, yes and no. This is a different one, because that's an 85 1.5, and there's also an 85 1.2. But this one is the
100. I haven't seen those, to be honest.
Yeah.
But make sure it's not first generation night vision optics too, night vision device, because all first generations are already active.
It makes a noise when you switch it on. I know that. Yeah. I don't know if it's a warning noise.
Grow tail yet?
Yeah, I didn't point it in my own direction, at least anyway. So
you gotta be careful sometimes with some stuff. I mean, some people were complaining that the LZ and LD lenses, the Intostar 61s.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have lanthanum in them, and I actually specifically borrowed a Geiger meter for those lenses, and I went through most of my collection with that Geiger meter, and they register less than background radiation. So, I mean, that gas is so sealed inside. I mean, I don't think that it's not like one of those was it the Kodak or Canon ones that actually are registering on Geigers. The Soviet ones, at least the civilian ones, even though they use radioactive elements, I mean, they're pretty safe. I've checked it myself. So those the one they have the yellow tint, the lanthanum glass.
Yeah, right.
So I mean,
I have a few of those here.
Yeah. So I think we covered most of the topics. Oh, another big announcement. So the SovietCams.com, that's probably the most famous Soviet camera website in the world, ran by Pikiotas, is now under a new ownership, and he was gonna shut it down. So I made a mirror copy of it, and Mike actually made a copy of it on our site. So we keep it going, but it was actually taken over by Ilya Stolyar, and he will continue that site. He's planning to redesign it to bring it to a more modern design, but keeping the same information, and he's going to keep adding stuff to it. So because I just stopped maintaining it about, I don't know, I have to say like 4 or 5 years ago, because I mean his main concentration now is Lomo and Gomes cameras. So he has plans to do a site on that as well, from what I heard. But for now, this site was kind of just sitting there as an archive. So hopefully, this will be that we're gonna get more additions on this one. So
that's good news, because I can't tell you how many things I've looked up on that site. I mean, it's so there's so much on there, information doesn't exist anywhere else, it seems like.
Exactly. He put his life into this site. I mean, I know that. I mean, there's how many years of his life went into categorizing every little tidbit of all these variations. I mean, he did an amazing job. I mean, to date, it's the most complete catalog of for Soviet cameras. I mean, obviously there's tons and tons missing, and I'm hoping Ilya will add those. But it's really good news. I mean, we are extremely happy that the site's going to keep going. So,
yeah, that's great.
Last time I was on there, I think it was actually after a conversation I was having with Perry, and we got particularly excited about the what's it called? Mercury.
I know the Mercury one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I, of course, went right to Vlad and said, "Hey, Vlad, what's up with this Mercury one? Have you ever seen one of these?" And I remember what you told me. You filled me in on it.
Right. It was from the Cometa.
Yeah.
It was made for the Brussels 1958 Expo. See, here's the thing about these cameras, and I came to a conclusion that a lot of these cameras, fancy cameras and fancy lenses in USSR, were just made as a proof of concept and to show off to the Western countries, to show that they are better than them.
Yeah.
And after that, they will never go to production. I mean, somebody just posted a whole catalog of things that went to the Brussels exhibit, and the catalog, and like most of these cameras, like only 30% were manufactured of those.
Wow.
The rest were just stayed as prototypes, maybe 5, 10, 15 made. That's it.
Wow. And see, what's really interesting to me about that is this particular lens that we're talking about. There was even a reference to it in, like, I don't know if it was Popular Photo, but there was a reference to it.
Right, because they
were listing it among these great Soviet, things you should know about. And of course, they probably heard about it secondhand. And how do you verify that information in the mid 60s, right?
Exactly. So, they don't hear about secondhand. They did an active advertising campaign. They had these brochures, like advertising.
Unbelievable.
They sent to everybody. Then they're giving them out during the expo. I mean, they got their prizes for the most creative cameras, and they just never made them.
Nice. I love it.
It's the same thing with this Horizon, the new digital Horizon with 3 sensors. They announced it, and where is it?
Yeah.
With Silvestri, I think, the Italian electronics in it. It was like a 3-lens panoramic with 3 sensors.
Oh my God! Did that Leica Zenit collab ever happen?
Yeah, they made
when that got announced. Did that happen?
Yeah, you can buy them, but they made on like 500 of them.
Okay.
And I don't know if they're gonna make another batch, but I mean, they're really just people. They're like hardcore, either collectors or just get them, and they have the special editions of them too now, like 70 years of or something. From like some kind of anniversary. I'm sorry, I forgot. But there's a special edition of it, like Leica does, and but that's pretty much it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people forget about them like 5 years from now.
Right.
But hopefully, I mean, it's a good start for KMZ. I mean, they make superb optics.
Yeah.
I mean, they are Zeiss taught. I mean, they started out on Zeiss equipment. I mean, basically everything they started out was repatriated from Dresden and Jena.
Wow.
In 1946. And they used this equipment all the way through like 60s, even 70s, whatever didn't break. And like it was basically, they got so used to it. I mean, they think of it as a Russian Zeiss with a Soviet glass. Really, that's it. I mean, some of the, like Helios 40, I mean, come on, look at that lens. It's just amazing. The Zenit R16, I still think it's one of the best fisheyes you can buy for the money.
Yeah.
It's sharper than the Nikon fisheye.
Yeah. Right.
And when it's a little bit closed down. I mean, even Ken Rockwell was like amazed. There's a review that he did, and he's like, "How can this be?" It's sharper than the Nikon, like a lot sharper. There's like almost no purple fringing on it.
Wow.
Like I used to use that lens on my Nikon D600 at a time, and just amazing. I mean, it's you don't even have to focus it. I mean, it's just fisheye. It's basically cool. Snap around. It's like a really nice full frame fisheye.
Yeah,
I think still think it's a bargain for any camera right now that you have. I mean, full frame, obviously. I mean, you wouldn't get the same benefit on APS-C.
So, Vlad, we thought we'd maybe save one special story for the end, and we wanted to dedicate this to Mike Gutterman. So I hear this story is slightly inappropriate, which would probably be perfect for Mike.
Well, yeah, that's the story I told you before, right? So this story was told to me by a very well-known French collector who unfortunately passed away recently. Well, not recently. It's been 10 years already, but time flies. Alain Berry. This came out as there was a book that Lomographic Society did called Lubitil, I think Love from Waist Level, if you guys remember that book.
Okay.
So the author asked me to put him in touch with a few Soviet collectors and ask for a few funny stories to put in the book, but this story never made it because it wasn't very appropriate for a book. So Alain was teaching photography in Paris. I think it might have been 70s or 80s, and it was winter semester. And he gave out all his students Lubitil cameras, the Lubitil 1 or 2, I don't remember anymore, and gave him a roll of film, and he's like, go shoot specific subject and come back. So everybody came back, but with some roll film that developed it, but for some reason, most of the girls in class, all their film was blank. It was basically exposed. And he's like, what happened? They're like, we don't know. So he gave them another roll of film. He's like, go redo it to these girls. And they came back again with an empty roll of film. And he couldn't understand what's going on. So he decided to go out with them and see what's happening. So basically, the reason that the film was exposed is a lot of these girls wore fluffy sweaters. I guess it was like a thing in the 80s or 70s. And they were, gifted in the chest area. So what happened was their sweaters would catch on the latches release on the door of the Lubitils and would keep opening the door every time because it's a waist level camera. It was keep opening the doors with cameras and exposing the film every single time. So that's a little tidbit of info he shared with me. I thought it was pretty funny.
Oh, man. Perfect.
That's all I got, guys.
That's perfect.
Well, there's a tip for our female listeners to be careful with Lubitel cameras. Right.
Oh, he went there.
Yeah. Right. Vlad, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show again.
Oh, it's been awesome. Thank you guys for having me. It's always fun to be on it.
Oh, it was May 2018.
That is so hard to believe.
That long.
Yeah,
that is so hard to believe.
And I have to admit, I'm guilty before you because with the pandemic, I don't drive anymore much.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to listen to the podcast anymore because it's usually the visual media I'm looking at. You guys should do a video show. I would totally watch that on my TV.
Well, Vlad, you can go on YouTube and you can watch the subtitles for the show.
Okay. Not as much fun though.
No, he's not convinced, is he?
No, not
it
quite.
would be kind of cool with a show and tell, don't you think?
Yeah.
Transition to visual media, guys.
Yeah, we have toyed with the idea on a few occasions, and then we argue amongst each other about who's actually going to edit the video, and then that's the end of the conversation every single time.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah,
we need a minion. We need a video minion.
That's right. We do. But I was going to say before we do shout outs and contact information and stuff like that, I just wish to say thank you to those people that have donated to us via coffee. So I'm not even actually, it's been a while again. We seem to be going long times between shows, and this is almost certainly going to be the last show this year as well, so it'll be next year before we're back. And when we do get back next year, we'll do some emails as well, because we've got quite a few emails again. So let me just thank those people, certainly everybody that's donated since this month. So we've got Lawrence Dunn. Thank you very much, Lawrence. And then James Cleveland wrote to us, here's a cuppa, missing your personalities and on the pod waves. Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, I say that we'll try to be on more often, but it's been quite tough getting the three of us together lately. Then we have an anonymous person, so thank you very, very much. Nigel Cliff says, excellent show as ever. Having done marsupials, can you do? Oh, I can't even pronounce that. Nigel's now killing himself laughing. So it's VIVERRIDAE next time. Any ideas what I've just spelt out? No, I guess not. Okay. Well, anyway, that. So then we had David Kaufman, who says, thank you for providing a small respite from the stresses and worries of life as it is playing out these days. Also for the gas. Brian Walworth, thank you very much. Then we have Burned from Cologne. Great show. Keep practicing to pronounce Relais right. I hope I did that well enough for you there, Bernd. And Jeremy North, thanks for the continuing mirth and occasional lens talk. Yeah, we do talk about lenses occasionally. So there you go. Thank you, Jeremy. Then there's Gumboot Dave. I've been listening. I've only been listening for a few months. You guys are my favourite podcast. Something about the mix of great information and dysfunctionality keeps me. Yes. Oh, I think that actually goes on for more than 2 sentences there. Oh yeah, it keeps me coming back. So yeah, thank you very much, Gumboot Dave, and then Christopher J. May. Thank you very, very much. So thank you for all those people. Right now then. Perry, are you still with us?
Yeah. I'm just listening. I'm just listening in the background because, Soviet cameras and lenses, they mostly went to the West, right? UK and the US for economic reasons because that's where they were selling. So here in the Far East, we just don't have them on the market. Like they're not rare, but for every Helios lens you find here, where the starting price for a Helios 44 here is at least $65-70 for every Helios lens here, you get a million different German and Japanese ones instead. So it's a big blind spot for me. So I'm just sitting back listening to this conversation because we don't have them here.
Check Japan.
Yeah, no, they exist, but just nowhere near in the same kinds of numbers and quantity. And so the prices are just kind of ludicrous because the stuff that you can pick up in Russia for, $10 for 50 copies of something, they'll be way more expensive here. And then sometimes things are just, I saw a dude sell a Lomo LCA 120 a couple weeks ago for around $50 because people just don't know what they are. It's just Soviet cheap piece of crap, just get rid of it. I was like, I think that's worth more than $50, but then someone snapped it up.
Well, there's a lot. I know some people in Ukraine that send Helios lenses by containers, thousands at a time, to Japan.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
To Asia, yeah. And this right now, it's huge there. So I'm sure a lot of them will surface right now in your area.
Well, that's cool. So, Perry, have you got any shout-outs this week?
I do not have any shout-outs.
Johnny, have you got any shout-outs? Where's Johnny? Okay, Johnny's run away, I think. Oh, no, you're still muted, Johnny. You're muted. We'll
Sorry, I was trying to find the cursor to unmute myself. I should always have this list, and I never have it in front of me. So, yeah, if I should give you a shout out, you probably know, and all of you, and then also Robbie, who I got to actually chat with yesterday, and we did a little work on a couple of his cameras and tuned them up. So.
So Vlad, have you got any shout-outs you want to say hello to in particular?
Really to all my collector friends all over the world. and the guys that are in the Facebook group. There's a Soviet Cameras Made in USSR group that right now seem to have concentrated a really good group of collectors from Italy, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, United States, UK. I mean, pretty much you name a country, they're there, and it's extremely informative. So if you're more into cameras and hardware, it's a really good group to be in. And I guess huge thanks to all the people contributing to all the websites with the information, like Soviet Cams, USSR Camera, and I guess we're looking forward for more info on the Soviet cameras. This is like one of the most scarce topic that is being, I guess, filled with information at this point, and it's extremely exciting.
It's a fascinating topic as well. I mean, because as we've said a few times, more information keeps on coming out, and whenever you see some information, it can be mind blowing at times. I mean, you shared something with the three of us earlier before we started the podcast, some information on lenses and schematics and things, and it's just it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing, the kind of stuff that comes out. So
feel free to post it in your Classic Lenses group.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
yeah, we were going nuts looking at this earlier. So,
you've mentioned a few websites and Facebook things and stuff like that, but which are the best places specifically for people to find where you're at?
I'm one of the admins on the Vintage Camera Collectors group, and the Soviet Cameras group, and the Soviet Cameras Made in USSR group. Also, I'm a moderator in Vintage Camera Users, and my website obviously is ussrphoto.com. There's a forum for longtime collectors, and I have an Instagram. It's just USSR Photo. And the same mirroring page on Facebook also. It's a USSR Photo blog, I think it's called. That's where I'm at. Always feel free to reach out to me via Facebook with any questions. I'm always glad to help a fellow collector.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. There's things I've asked you before, and you've helped out, and I think the same goes for Perry and Johnny as well. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's fun for me to share the information. So I love that stuff.
Right. Well, Perry, outside of the show, where can people see the things that you do?
You can find me on Instagram and Flickr at Perry G. I haven't posted for months. That may continue soon.
Is that because you haven't been buying any lenses?
Possibly. I don't know if the two are particularly correlated. I just haven't developed. I have a couple of rolls of film that I'm just backed up on, and it's been a while since I've developed film. And once you lose that rhythm, I'm like, I don't really feel like doing it today. I'll do something else instead.
Yeah.
So I haven't got around to it.
Doing nothing is easy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I've been crazy busy. That's the main thing.
Well, yeah,
because we don't really have COVID as much.
Yeah. Johnny, how about yourself?
Yeah, you can also not find me on Instagram. At Second City Auto is, I think, the account I'm most frequently not using right now. One of these days, I'll do some more on there. One of these days, got other things going on right now.
So, if anybody wants to get in touch with the show, what's the best way of dealing with that?
Send us an email at classiclensespodcast@gmail.com. On Instagram, you actually will find Classic Lens photos at Best Vintage Lens. Also, of course, go to the podcast website at classiclensespodcast.com, where you can buy t-shirts and other swag and all that good stuff. And you can watch the captions for the podcast if you want to do that over on YouTube, and you can join Vlad watching the captions over there.
Right, and I'm on Twitter as Simon4. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic, which is also almost the name of my website, which is simonforsterphotographic.co.uk, with my ever increasing range of lens caps and things of that kind of nature. And well, that's just about it. Vlad, it's been absolutely fantastic having you again.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm back to rigging building collection.
Yeah,
it's been fantastic, and that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this week's show, and if you can, be like Carl.